Hello, my name is Randy Silva, and for the next hour I'll be reading from the June 26th issue of the Rochester Business Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Rochester will use incentive fund to entice airlines to add non-stops to West by Kevin Oklobzija. Local economic development and tourism officials believe Rochester's business and educational ecosystem will be strengthened if they can convince airlines to establish non-stop routes to destinations west of the Mississippi River. That's why a push is underway to create a community airport incentive fund through which airlines would be compensated for providing news service from Frederick Douglass Greater Rochester International Airport, especially to major cities in the Southwest and West. Tops on the wish list, Dallas and Denver, followed by Las Vegas, Phoenix, Minneapolis, and Los Angeles. An airline would be giving cash to mitigate the risk in establishing a new route and/or marketing dollars for promotion. The County of Monroe Industrial Development Agency voted earlier this month to provide $150,000 in seed money for the fund, which has the support of county leaders, Economic Development Alliance, One Rock, Greater Rochester Enterprise, and the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce, and will be administered by Visit Rochester. Their reasoning for the creation of the fund, which was presented to the Comida Board at June 16 meeting, expanded air service is a catalyst for economic growth. Backers say businesses are more likely to consider expansion to Rochester if it is easily accessible from all parts of the country, workforce mobility is enhanced, and existing firms maintain an ability to compete in a connected economy. A study by the National Academy of Sciences, published in 2025, showed that 100 additional passengers to an airport will equate to the creation of one new job over the course of a year. I have regular discussions with the GRE, the Chamber, and One Rock, and air service comes up in conversations with companies looking to locate in Rochester, Airport Director Andrew Moore said. There's also the tourism component. Visit Rochester President and CEO Don Jeffries says the tourism industry creates a $1.5 billion economic impact annually in Greater Rochester. Vacationers and convention goers that arrive by air are spending money in hotels, restaurants, and stores, at cultural institutions, and on-ground transportation. But convincing an airline to add a new route isn't an easy endeavor. The airline must be assured it won't lose money, and pretty much any city with a runway and a control tower is ready to throw a parade. There are around 400 commercial service airports nationwide, from large hubs down to very, very small community airports, Moore said. And every airport thinks they're deserving of more air service. Many of those cities already have airport incentive funds. That includes an ROC competitor, Syracuse Hancock International Airport, which uses its air service incentive program to maintain existing routes and entice carriers to add new destinations. That's why establishing an incentive fund now is important for Rochester, Moore said. Community incentive programs are used to make an airport and community more attractive to airlines, he said, adding that if you're trying to play catch-up, you've already lost. Direct service to high-demand cities can not only drive more traffic through the Rock Airport, but also reduces the number of people driving to west and east to fly out of Buffalo and Syracuse. Attracting more destinations for the people that fly out of Rochester decreases the amount of passenger leakage to nearby airports, Moore added. The major air carriers don't frequently add routes at smaller airports, and it's even more difficult now with high fuel costs and tighter profit margins, said Matt Hurlbut, President and CEO of Greater Rochester Enterprise. We want to put our best foot forward and be more creative in the way we can help the airlines, Hurlbut said. Denver and Dallas are the routes that Rochester officials want most. A non-stop to Denver provides easy connections to a multitude of other cities. On average, there are 65 passengers a day leaving Rochester for Denver, and at certain times during the year the number climbs to 80, Moore said. On average, there are 80 passengers a day flying from Rock to Las Vegas. A critical component of the equation, ensuring any added non-stop creates new traffic, not just a means for the same traveler to avoid connections. Airlines don't want to cannibalize other routes, Moore said. As an airport director, Moore can speak with airlines, create marketing packages, and act in an advisory role in efforts to recruit new routes. But under Federal Aviation Administration rules, can't be involved in any negotiations for new service. With the incentive fund, that would be done by Visit Rochester. Passenger trends at Rock are encouraging. Passenger traffic grew by 4% in 2025 and was up another 4% year over year through May of this year. Business travel is coming back, and people still like to take vacations and go visit friends and family, Moore said. But ultimately, this is an economic development initiative. Rochester Executives Share Playbook for AI Implementation by Andrea Decker. As organizations across industries race to identify practical applications for artificial intelligence, finance and marketing executives are increasingly focused on a fundamental question: how can AI investments deliver measurable business value? That challenge took center stage June 18th at an AI summit hosted at the Genesee Valley Club, where business leaders shared lessons learned from deploying AI across their organizations and discussed strategies for translating emerging technology into tangible business outcomes. Presented by the Rochester Business Journal in collaboration with Cause and Effect Strategy, Dixon, Schwabel and Company, FLX AI and Strategy, the event brought together finance and marketing leaders from a range of industries to explore real-world use cases, implementation strategies, and the organizational challenges required to successfully integrate AI into everyday operations. Discussions focused on practical applications ranging from forecasting and analytics to content creation and customer insights. Attendees also examined how to identify high-impact opportunities, evaluate AI investments responsibly, and build organizational alignment around adoption. The keynote address was delivered by Sid Bendre, co-founder of New York City-based Olive, who shared insights on how AI-native companies are leveraging the technology to create rapidly while maintaining lean teams. AI-native teams are the experiment, and everyone else gets to benefit from the results, Bendre told the attendees. A Forbes 30 Under 30 entrepreneur and a 2023 University of Rochester graduate, Bendre declined an offer from Palantir to launch Olive, an AI-native consumer technology company that has grown to more than 8 million users and over $10 million in annual recurring revenue, with a team of just 5 employees. Bendre's apps have reached the top 5 in their App Store categories, including one that climbed to number 4 alongside ChatGPT. His ventures have generated more than 2 billion social media impressions and attracted backing from technology leaders and investors connected to companies including Slack, Cognition, Tinder, and Scale AI. Drawing on those experiences, Bendre emphasized that there is no universal blueprint for AI adoption. Instead, he encouraged organizations to empower employees to identify where AI can help them achieve business goals and improve performance. He cautioned, however, against viewing AI as a replacement for human expertise. While AI can drive productivity gains and create efficiencies, it cannot replicate institutional knowledge, relationships, or the trust that organizations build with customers and stakeholders, he said. Bendre also stressed the importance of responsible implementation as companies expand their use of the technology. AI is like a machine gun, he said. If you don't know how to aim it, you can create a lot of chaos. Following the keynote, an executive panel discussion titled Turning AI Strategy into Action for Marketing and Finance Teams explored how organizations are operationalizing AI, and establishing governance frameworks to support long-term success. The discussion was moderated by John C.S. Lowry, president of Cause and Effect Strategy. AI may be new, but the responsibility of leadership is not, Lowry said. Panelists included Mallory Benjamin, Chief Transformation Officer at Dixon and Schwabel and Company, Jane Bernard, Chief Financial Officer at Nixon Peabody, Kyle Satay, Vice President of Sales and Marketing at ITX Core, and Anthony Cinto, CPA, Chair of the Tax Department at MMB & Co. The panelists shared examples of how AI is helping automate routine tasks, improve efficiency, and free employees to focus on higher value work, including customer engagement and strategic decision-making. Cinto said AI is helping elevate the human at MMB & Co. by accelerating employee development and supporting retention efforts through increased productivity. Bernard described how Nixon Peabody is fostering what she called an AI mentality across the organization, encouraging employees to actively incorporate AI into their work and participate in company-wide AI challenges. We want employees to get comfortable using it and talking about how they're using it, Bernard said. Satay highlighted the importance of clear guardrails, explaining that ITX Core's leadership team developed a set of AI guidelines outlining acceptable and prohibited uses of the technology. The framework, he said, gave employees confidence to experiment while maintaining appropriate controls. Benjamin encouraged leaders to embrace a mindset of adaptability as AI capabilities continue to evolve. Be curious, she said. Acquisition of Adventive enables Brandmint to set ads in motion, by Kevin Oklobzija. Advertising agency Brandmint has added a well-established technical platform to its product offerings, providing clients with a means to bring the static to life. Brandmint recently acquired Adventive, a Rochester-based digital ad technology firm that specializes in the creation, delivery, and audience reach measurement of interactive advertising. While Adventive has been providing its product primarily to the digital publishing community, Brandmint will now be able to incorporate the proprietary elements of the platform into offerings to clients. It's rich media, it's dynamic motion, static versus interactive, said Louis Mayer, president and founder of Brandmint. Static ads still comprise about 80% of what shows up on websites and social media platforms. Adventive's technology adds motion and or video, creating a more vibrant ad that fills in the standard interactive advertising bureau format sizes of most platforms. Those dynamic and interactive ad formats are the technology that Adventive has to easily and quickly create those ads, Mayer said, which in turn creates a more engaging, more dynamic spot that the consumer is more apt to not just notice, but also remember. And that is the ultimate goal for advertisers, Adventive President Jeff Lambert said. For the advertiser, it's well known, if you can capture somebody's attention for 1 to 2 seconds, brand recognition becomes a real thing, Lambert said. With static advertising, people don't even realize that there was an ad, as they're just scrolling past whatever to find the content that they wanted. Motion or changing colors or other enhancements created by Adventive and or the team at Brandmint changed the game, however. If you start scrolling and there's a dynamic, motion-based, or interactive ad unit, many people will stop for a second, Lambert said. In that 1 or 2 seconds that they stop, the brand is able to engage with that viewer. Whether or not they were interested in the product, brand recognition becomes a real thing. Engagement-enriched media ad units skyrocket, and that's what brands are looking for. Maybe it's a picture in the ad that starts moving or animating the moment you're scrolling by. It's not just the normal ad we've seen 1,000 times, so our brain clicks out of ignore mode. Human nature pauses for a second, Lambert said. Just those 1 or 2 seconds allows you to capture the attention of that particular viewer. Years ago, the KPIs, key performance indicators, used to be impressions and click-throughs. More and more frequently, advertisers are looking for engagement and interactivity statistics. They're less concerned about somebody clicking through and more concerned if someone's engaging with the brand. That's where the real money is. Around 95% of Adventive's client base is the publishing industry, Mayer said. Those publishers, such as the New York Times, Boston Globe, and Essence, then provide a service to brands. Well, if the publishers are serving the brands, why can't Adventive serve the agencies and the brands, Mayer said. That expanded potential is a big reason why Adventive was attractive to Brandmint. And Adventive's move into the advertising agency space accelerates one of Lambert's goals. The relationship with Brandmint is interesting, because I've always wanted to get into the agency side of business, Lambert said. Working with Louis, it's becoming apparent that maybe Adventive wasn't initially ready for the way agency market works, but we sure have a tool that will fulfill a lot of the agency market's needs. Mayer believes Brandmint clients in the financial services space are ideal candidates for the Adventive platform. Banks, credit unions, insurance brokers, so too are those in the academic, automotive, food and beverage, consumer packaged goods, fashion, and health and wellness sectors. Adventive will continue to operate under its own name as a subsidiary of Brandmint, which now can incorporate advancements in technology into its creative content. By combining thoughtful creative direction with in-house technical expertise, we produce high-impact content that performs across organic and paid channels, Mayer said. Because Brandmint has been historically creative in media buying, we're bringing a whole new level of expertise from the technology side, the engineering side. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Rochester Business Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Rochester Business Hall of Fame announces Class of 2026 by RBJ staff. Junior Achievement of Central Upstate New York and the Rochester Business Journal announced that 3 business leaders will be inducted to the Rochester Business Hall of Fame in 2026, joining 155 others who previously have been honored for their contributions to Rochester. The new inductees will be William H. Goodrich, Chairman and CEO, LeChase Construction Services, LLC. Edward J. Pettinella, Posthumous Award, former President and Chief Executive Officer, Home Properties, Inc. James Sidor, Chairman, Sidor Optics, Inc. The 2026 Rochester Business Hall of Fame induction dinner will take place on Monday, October 19th, 2026, at the Joseph A. Floriano Rochester Riverside Convention Center, beginning at 5:30 p.m. Goodrich has worked at LeChase since 1985, progressing from Vice President and Partner in 1995 to Chief Operating Officer in 1997, President in 2002, CEO in 2007, Managing Partner in 2008, and Chairman and CEO in 2024. Goodrich has served on the boards of the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce, Greater Rochester Enterprise, ROC 2025, CMAC Performing Arts Center, and the New York State Trooper Foundation. In 2021, he served as the campaign chair for United Way of Greater Rochester and the Finger Lakes. Pettinella, who died January at the age of 76, started his career in banking at Community Savings Bank and later served as president of Charter One Bank of New York and executive vice president of Charter One Financial, Inc., as well as in several management positions with Rochester Community Savings Bank. In 2001, Pettinella joined Home Properties, serving first as executive vice president and then president and CEO. He then served on the boards of Life Storage, Inc., Manning and Napier, Inc., and Royal Oak Realty Trust, Inc. His philanthropic efforts included Syracuse University, SUNY Geneseo, the YMCA, United Way, and Gilisano's Children's Hospital. Sidor serves as chairman of Sidor Optics and has spent more the shaping of the precision optics industry. He has served as president of the American Precision Optics Manufacturing Association and received the SPIE President's Award this year. Last year, Sidor Optics donated $3 million to Monroe's Community College's optics program. Established in 2001, the Rochester Business Hall of Fame is presented annually by Junior Achievement of the Central Upstate New York and the Rochester Business Journal. Honorees are selected by the Hall of Fame Committee, which is advised by an independent group that includes past inductees. Proceeds from ticket and sponsorship support Junior Achievement of Central Upstate New York, providing local JA students with financial literacy, entrepreneurial and career readiness skills that enable economic mobility and lifelong success. For sponsorship or ticket information, contact Junior Achievement of Central Upstate New York at 585-327-7400, email info.jacuny.org, or visit cuny.ja.org. Rochester Logistics Firm celebrates EY Entrepreneur of the Year recognition by Andrea Decker. Jay McHarg, CEO of Rochester-based AeroSafe Global, has been named an EY Entrepreneur of the Year 2026 New York Award winner by Ernst & Young LLP. McHarg was selected by an independent panel of judges comprised of previous award recipients, CEOs, investors, and regional business leaders. The Entrepreneur of the Year program recognizes business leaders who demonstrate long-term value creation through entrepreneurial vision, purpose, growth, and impact. Under McHarg's leadership, AeroSafe Global has emerged as a leading innovator in the biopharmaceutical supply chain, pioneering its proprietary cold chain as a service model. The company specializes in the transport of temperature-sensitive pharmaceuticals and therapies, ensuring critical medicines reach patients around the world safely and reliably. Today, AeroSafe Global operates in more than 80 countries, delivering life-saving therapies with the zero-failure approach, while also advancing sustainability goals. According to the company, its reusable shipping systems reduce carbon emissions by 65% and decrease landfill waste by 90% compared with traditional packaging methods. Being named Entrepreneur of the Year regional winner is a tremendous honor, but more than anything, it validates the relentless dedication of the entire AeroSafe Global team, McHarg said in a statement. Following the June 16th awards celebration, McHarg will advance to consideration for the Entrepreneur of the Year National Awards, with winners set to be announced in November. The EY recognition adds to a growing list of accolades for McHarg. He has also been named the 2026 recipient of the Herbert W. Vanden Breuel Entrepreneurial Award, presented by the Saunders College of Business at Rochester Institute of Technology. Established in 1984, the Van Brule Award honors Rochester area entrepreneurs whose innovative leadership has made a significant impact on the regional economy. Paychex reports strong fiscal 2026 revenue growth by Andrea Deckert. Paychex closed out fiscal 2026 with a strong fourth quarter and full year results, posting double-digit revenue growth and signaling confidence in continued momentum heading into fiscal 2027. The provider of human capital management, payroll, and employee benefits solution reported fourth quarter revenue of $1.61 billion, a 12% increase from the same period a year ago. The diluted earnings per share rose 43% to $1.17, while adjusted diluted earnings per share increased 11% to $1.32. For the full fiscal year, revenue climbed 17% to $6.51 billion. Diluted earnings per share increased 7% to $4.89, and adjusted diluted earnings per share rose 11% to $5.51. We finished fiscal 2026 with strong momentum, delivering double-digit revenue and earnings growth while accelerating organic revenue growth throughout the year, said President and CEO John Gibson. Gibson credited the company's performance to the successful integration of acquired payroll and human resources software company Paycor, and continued investments in artificial intelligence capabilities. These results reflect solid execution against two of our strategic priorities: the successful integration of Paycor to advance our upmarket expansion, and AI innovation that further differentiates our HCM and advisory solutions, Gibson said. The company also highlighted the launch of Wise, its new AI-powered intelligence engine, which has been deployed across Paychex's human capital management platforms and internal operations. According to the company, the platform uses patent-pending technology to analyze unstructured data, helping improve productivity and deliver more proactive services and insights to clients. Our durable business model and strong cash generation enabled us to return $2.2 billion to shareholders this fiscal year, while continuing to invest in innovation and future growth, Gibson said. Looking ahead, Paychex expects fiscal 2027 revenue growth in the range of 5% to 6%, with adjusted diluted earnings per share projected to increase between 7% and 9%. Locally, Paychex employs about 4,170 people in the Rochester region, down roughly 2% or 150 positions from May of 2025. Rochester healthcare leader named CEO of North Star Network by Andrea Deckert. North Star Network has named Andrea DeMeo as president and CEO effective August 1st. She joins North Star with more than 3 decades of leadership experience in healthcare, nonprofit management, strategy operations, and community engagement. In her new role, DeMeo will lead the continued evolution of North Star's flagship programs, ensuring they remain responsive to the needs of sponsors, partners, and the regional healthcare community. She will also oversee the selection and engagement of the more than 50 speakers who contribute to the North Star's programming each year. Since 2014, the Academy has graduated 890 fellows. DeMeo will work alongside Linda Becker, chairman, who will continue to interface with the board of advisors and focus on delivering ongoing value to its members. Lauren Baruto, executive director, will continue to lead the fellowship program and serve as the primary contact for the 70-plus local executives who participate annually. Andrea's experience, vision, and commitment to community health makes her an exceptional fit for North Star's next chapter, Becker said. We are thrilled to welcome her and honored to have her on our leadership team. Prior to joining North Star, DeMeo served as president and CEO of Trillium Health. During her 9-year tenure, she led organizational growth, increasing revenue from $15 million to $53 million, and expanding patient census from 1,000 to 14,000. She also launched clinical and community programs, strengthened financial sustainability, and advanced the organization's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Her career includes 15 years of leadership roles at the University of Rochester Medical Center's Center for Community Health and a Community Health Center lookalike, and Chief Operating Officer for the Visiting Nurse Service of Monroe County. DeMeo has served on numerous nonprofit and healthcare boards, including the Community Healthcare Association of New York State, the American Red Cross Greater Rochester Chapter, the YMCA of Greater Rochester, Junior Achievement of Rochester, the Finger Lakes Visiting Nurse Service, and 10 years on the North Star Network Board of Advisors. She is a 2015 graduate of the North Star Network Healthcare Business Academy Fellowship Program. Patina Extreme: What Berlin Reinforced About Rochester's Next Chapter. Greater Rock by Shannon Ely. A few blocks from the apartment we rented in Berlin sat an old, very rusty car. It was parked on a leafy neighborhood side street with busy cafes and young people spilling outside to watch the World Cup. At first glance, I thought it had been abandoned, but then I saw several pieces of paper taped inside the window. Curious, I pulled out Google Lens to translate. They included the car's model, ownership history, and the philosophy behind the German phrase patina extreme, preserving signs of use, rust, dents, and the marks time leaves behind. Only strictly necessary maintenance was done to keep it running. The papers also noted that, because of its condition, the car had run into issues with authorities, but for now it remains tolerated on the streets of Berlin. The car was 1/3 museum, 1/3 street art, and 1/3 mode of transportation. And over the course of a week exploring Berlin, it became an interesting reflection point for the city and cities in general. I was there for personal reasons, but when your work involves understanding why people choose one place over another, it's hard not to study one of the world's most dynamic capitals when given the chance. I expected to be inspired by placemaking, how Berlin activates its Spree River and canals and uses them as economic and neighborhood drivers. And I did. The lively street cafes and spas, people sitting along the river on a hot day with a crisp Kolsch, informal music and activity filling public spaces, countless tour boats serving currywurst and Aperol spritzes to tourists and groups of lively German revelers, explaining centuries of history as they glided past stunning palaces and brutalist architecture. It's impossible to spend time there without feeling the city's complexity, just as it's impossible not to notice the graffiti that covers nearly every service in many neighborhoods. Most of the city was leveled during World War II. Post-war, it was occupied by the Allies, divided into the East and West Berlin during the Cold War, and reunited fewer than 40 years ago. The historic buildings that remain still show evidence of the past, including the bombed-out Kaiser Wilhelm Church in the heart of downtown business and shopping district. Much of the Berlin Wall still stands, reclaimed by public art. Former industrial spaces have become places for culture, business, and community, and new layers of glass, steel, and modern design have become part of the skyline. What became clear is that Berlin's past is not something the city moved beyond. It's very much a part of what makes it distinct. As part of the Regional Revitalization Partnership, One Rock's work focuses on how we can leverage the incredible assets Rochester already has: our riverway, historic buildings, neighborhoods, innovation ecosystems, and creative community to support the region's next chapter. Our histories are obviously very different, but Rochester is also a city shaped by transformation. We're a place that helps to define an era of global innovation and industry, experienced great wealth and explosive growth, navigated periods of disruption, and are now actively writing our next chapter. The question is not how we recreate what we were, but how we use what we have now. Sections of the Berlin Wall ran along the Spree. The river was not always a gathering place. It was, quite literally, a dividing line. Today, people sit, eat, drink, listen to music, and spend time in places they once could not cross. Rochester has its own river story. The Genesee powered the growth of our city, but for generations much of our relationship with it was industrial rather than experiential. That is now changing. Through investments like Rock the Riverway, including Rock City Skate Park, Austin Stewart Plaza, the Promenade, the Riverway Convention Center, and continued downtown activation, we have an opportunity to reconnect people with one of Rochester's defining assets. At a nearby cocktail bar, the owner spoke about how Berlin's affordability and available space helped create an environment where artists and people looking for a different way of life could live cheaply, experiment boldly, and connect with others doing the same. From one cultural lens, it's easy to see rampant graffiti and immediately think of disinvestment or disrespect. But after a few days in Berlin, I started seeing that creative energy was everywhere, not just in galleries and formal cultural spaces, but on streets, buildings, and unexpected corners of the city. My partner, an avid street art fan, stopped every few feet to photograph another piece. Just as with Toronto's Graffiti Alley, numerous locations that could have been dismissed as places to avoid become destinations. Rochester understands this too. The old subway, though not formally accessible today, became a world-renowned street art destination precisely because people saw possibility in an unexpected place. Wall therapy transformed blank walls into landmarks. Artists like Sarah Rutherford, Sean Dunwoody, Delirious, Aerosol Kingdom, and the FUA crew continue that legacy today. The connection between culture and economic growth came through clearly in my conversation with Sandra and Garrett at the Berlin Partner, the city's economic development agency, about Berlin's strengths in industries including optics, microelectronics, and quantum. From the city's creative identity to places like Aldershorf, where historic science and research assets have evolved into a major technology district and neighborhood, Berlin's innovation economy is not separate from its broader story of reinvention. The qualities that attract people, vibrant neighborhoods, gathering places, culture, density, and a sense of possibility, are increasingly the same qualities that attract companies and talent. We still have something in Rochester that many larger, more expensive cities, including increasingly Berlin, have less of: space. Space in historic buildings, space along the river, space in neighborhoods with character, space for people with ideas to make them reality. That kind of openness can be easy to undersell because it requires people to see potential before all the traditional signals are there. But for the right small business owner, artist, founder, developer, or creative person looking for a place where their work can actually shape the fabric of the city, it can also read as possibility. That idea is at the heart of how we have been thinking about Rochester's story through the Greater Rock Iconic Then, Now, Next campaign. Our then is undeniable. We're a city and region that helped shape the world through innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship. Our now is about recognizing the people and places already creating momentum. And our next will come from inviting more people to see what is possible here and giving them the space to help create it. I went to Berlin looking for lessons in placemaking and ecosystem development. I came home thinking more about how cities create the conditions for people to bring places to life. Rochester doesn't need to become Berlin, although I wouldn't mind our own Berghain, looking at you, Chuck Cerankosky. It's clear that no successful city becomes great just by copying another. The strongest cities understand their own story and create opportunities for more people to become part of authoring what comes next. And the good news is, Rochester is already doing this. Across our economic development, tourism, business, arts, and community partners, we're telling a stronger story about who we are and what is possible here. Now the work is to keep going, to be bolder, more coordinated, and more confident in inviting people to see the opportunity for themselves. Maybe that is the lesson of Patina Extreme, and of Berlin. The most interesting places are rarely the most polished. They are the places where history, creativity, and the people who call them home are allowed to leave their mark. Shannon Ely is Vice President of Innovation at One Rock, where she aligns partners, strategy, and investment across Greater Rochester's economic development ecosystem and serves as Deputy Regional Innovation Officer for the NY Smart I Corridor Tech Hub, strengthening the semiconductor workforce and supply chain across Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Rochester Business Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Third-party risk grows as businesses expand vendor networks by Corey Putnam. Third-party risk is growing in importance, with 87% of executives in a 2025 Deloitte report saying it matters more today than it did 3 years ago. As businesses expand their vendor networks, insurers and legal professionals are taking a closer look at the exposure those relationships can bring. As businesses continue to outsource functions, rely on specialized vendors, and build complex service networks, third-party relationships have become essential to operations. But they are also a growing source of risk, said Kirsten Shepard, CIC, CRM, CISR Elite, Senior Risk Management Consultant, One Group. Shepard said that if a vendor causes a loss, the hiring organization is often still brought into the claim, regardless of fault. And as a result, insurance companies are paying closer attention to how these relationships are structured, managed, and insured. Businesses are outsourcing everything from IT to HR to construction and professional services, increasing exposure to risks outside their direct control, Shepard said. She adds that insurers' heightened focus also reflects increasingly complex supply chains and litigation trends. A single vendor failure can disrupt operations, damage reputation, or trigger downstream liabilities, she said. noting that courts are increasingly willing to draw multiple parties into claims even when responsibility is indirect. Shepard notes that cyber risk has become a major concern, as third parties often have to access sensitive systems and information, making them a common entry point for breaches. To better manage these risks, Shepard said businesses should focus on contractual risk transfer and insurance. The good news is that much of this exposure can be controlled through contractual risk transfer and insurance, she said. That includes requiring vendors to carry appropriate coverage, such as commercial general liability, auto liability, workers' compensation, professional liability, and cyber liability, along with protections like additional insured status and waivers of subrogation. Shepard stressed that businesses should not rely solely on certificates of insurance. Instead, she recommends reviewing policy endorsements, tracking active coverage, and periodically reassessing vendors for compliance, safety performance, and claims history. Insurance alone is not enough, Shepard said. Even well-structured insurance programs won't fully protect you without strong contractual language. As businesses increasingly rely on outside vendors for specialized services, Lauren R. Mendolora, a partner at Harder, Seacrest, and Emory, said many may not fully understand the legal and liability risks those relationships can create. While you might get expertise in a certain area, there is some liability risk and risk trade-offs that come with that, she said, acknowledging that while third-party vendors often bring valuable expertise, they can also create significant exposure if contracts and insurance requirements are not carefully reviewed. She explained that when vendor relationships are not properly documented, liability can quickly move from one party to another, particularly in industries like construction, where multiple contractors and subcontractors may be involved. If you don't have contracts in place to really set forth how that relationship is supposed to work, the liability can pass from entity to entity, Mendolora said. She noted that plaintiffs are increasingly pursuing multiple parties and claims, making it easier for liability to spread across business relationships. Never does the roofer just sue the subcontractor, she said. He always sues the contractor and the owner, and then everybody fights over liability. Mendolora said cyber risk has become another growing concern, especially as businesses use third-party vendors to store sensitive data. With a lot of cyber insurance policies, there's a requirement that coverage will only pass to a third-party vendor who's storing data if you have a signed contract with them, she said, explaining that this can create major coverage gaps if businesses rely on informal vendor relationships or outdated agreements. To better manage those risks, Mendolora recommends properly vetting vendors and looking beyond certificates of insurance when reviewing coverage. A certificate of insurance can be authored by brokers, she said. It's not legally binding on the insurance company. Instead, she recommends reviewing the actual policy and cautions against over-reliance on AI-generated contracts. It really is still so important to put your contracts in front of a licensed attorney who knows what they're doing, she said. If you haven't done that in the last 2 years plus, now's the time to do that. As insurers place greater scrutiny on vendor relationships, Mark S. Verdi, CIC, a partner at Lawley, said many businesses underestimate how much risk can remain attached to outsourced services. When you outsource a function, you don't always outsource the risk, Verdi said. He said vendor and third-party relationships are receiving greater attention because businesses rely heavily on outside providers for critical functions such as information technology, payroll, logistics, and professional services. While these services improve efficiency, they also create risks that are often outside the company's direct control, and the insurance carriers are aware of this, he said. Verdi said one of the biggest exposures in businesses face today is cyber risk, particularly when vendors handle sensitive customer or employee data. If a vendor exposes your customer or employee data, your company can face breach notifications, cost regulatory fines, and class action lawsuits, Verdi said. He added that risks can become even more severe when outside IIT providers are compromised, creating a pathway for ransomware or other attacks to enter a company's systems. We've seen claims where a vendor's remote access tool or software updates were infected, allowing access into the client's system, resulting in operations being shut down and forcing businesses offline, he said. To better manage those risks, Verdi said businesses should conduct due diligence before engaging a third-party provider, including reviewing a vendor's financial stability, operational capabilities, cybersecurity practices, and insurance coverage. He also stressed the importance of strong contracts that clearly define responsibilities and establish protections up front. I always advise including a hold harmless and an indemnification provision, where appropriate, and establishing a solid minimum insurance requirements, Verdi said. These are all essential components of an effective risk management strategy. Commercial insurance rates rise slower as New York underwriters focus on risk management, by Corey Putnam. Commercial insurance rates continue to climb in early 2026, though at a slower pace than in recent years, according to a recent industry survey. As the market shifts and underwriting standards evolve, we asked local professionals what insurers are prioritizing and what business owners can do to strengthen their risk profile. Aside from the type of industry and business operations, insurers are reviewing the financial stability and risk management practices of current and potential customers, said Greg Nickley, Senior Vice President, Gallagher Retail Brokerage, about the biggest factors insurers are evaluating when underwriting businesses today. Nickley explains that insurers evaluate the financial health of a business to ensure it can meet its obligations, including paying premiums, and a profitable business is less likely to cut corners on safety and compliance, reducing risk exposure. Businesses with strong safety measures are reviewed as lower risk, he said. Adherency to industry regulations and standards also reduces liability risks. Nickley said underwriting expectations have become increasingly data-driven in recent years, with insurers relying more heavily on predictive modeling and analytics to forecast potential losses. Insurers are leveraging big data, artificial intelligence, and machine learning to assess risks more accurately, he said. This includes analyzing historical claims data, market trends, and external data resources. That increased scrutiny, he said, means businesses are being evaluated more holistically than ever before, with underwriters looking beyond claims history to assess operational resilience, cybersecurity readiness, and long-term financial stability. He said businesses that can clearly demonstrate sound internal controls and a proactive approach to risk often stand out more favorably in the underwriting process. Businesses can strengthen their risk profile by making transparency part of their insurance story, Nickley said. A healthy balance sheet and consistent profitability, low debt levels, and clear compliance records help show insurers that business is disciplined, stable, and committed to managing risk. He added that formal risk management plans, strong cybersecurity controls, and business continuity strategies can also improve insurability by demonstrating preparedness before a loss occurs. AI and cybersecurity are quickly becoming two sides of the same risk conversation, Nickley said. As businesses adopt more digital tools, they need to understand not only how those technologies can create efficiency, but also how they can introduce new exposures tied to data, operations, intellectual property, and reputation. Brett Findley, Senior Vice President and Construction Practice Leader at One Group, said underwriting in the construction space starts with measuring exposure, but risk management practices can have a major impact on pricing and eligibility. First and foremost, insurance underwriters are looking to gauge risk and then quantify that risk via exposure, he said. To put that into perspective, exposure for a construction company could be gross sales, payroll, or subcontracting costs in most instances. Findley said carriers apply rates based on the type of work being performed and the level of risk associated with it. But beyond the numbers, underwriters are increasingly evaluating how well businesses manage risk. The aspect that not as many people talk about is the risk management strength of the operation that the underwriter is looking at, and how that can affect pricing and program eligibility, he said. Findley pointed to 3 key areas construction firms should prioritize: contractual risk transfer, risk management, and loss control, and safety program adherence. Contractual risk transfer, subcontractors agreement, is critical in New York State, he said. If you don't have proper risk transfer, many carriers will not even entertain your business. Findley said having a proactive loss control strategy and clearly communicating that strategy to underwriters can also improve terms. A strong safety manual and adherence to it can be a differentiator, he said, adding that accountability and consistency can become the secret sauce when negotiating coverage. Findley said the construction insurance market in New York is beginning to soften after several years of a hard market, but underwriting remains strict. The market is softening now for the first time in a long time, but strict underwriting guidelines remain, he said. And with the development of technology and AI in the insurance world, models are changing. He also urged businesses to be strategic about broker relationships and to avoid flooding the market with multiple submissions. When underwriters and carriers receive the same account from multiple sources year after year, it can weaken the overall presentation, Findlay said. Looking ahead, he said contractors should pay close attention to automotive, cyber liability, and pollution liability risks, all of which can carry significant financial consequences if left unaddressed. Corey Putnam is a Rochester area freelance writer, and you are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Rochester Business Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. An Olympic-sized collaboration between Lake Placid, Big Apple. Governor Kathy Hochul's recent announcement about New York City's possibly hosting the Olympics isn't a new idea. In fact, 22 years ago, a similar proposal was explored by one of her gubernatorial predecessors, George Pataki. The main difference between the two explorations is that one involved the Summer Games. This one entails the Winter Games in a collaboration with two-time host Lake Placid, site of arguably the most memorable moment in U.S. sports history back in 1980, when a ragamuffin but fiercely driven American squad of hockey amateurs performed its miracle on ice, upsetting the mighty Soviet Union's professional team to capture the gold medal. Many New Yorkers have already taken to the internet and the airwaves in an attempt to put the kibosh on a third Olympiad in the Empire State. Some have told Hochul to forget about it, no mas. I might be in the minority, but I like the idea of seeing the Olympic cauldron lit in our state again. So what if the odds are heavily stacked against a city that never sleeps and a somnolent Adirondack village of 2,300 residents with a Swiss ski resort vibe? Do you believe in miracles? Yes, I freely admit it. I'm biased on this one. My views shaped by nostalgia and personal connections to the Olympics. I wasn't there for the heroics of Mike Erozione's David stoning Goliath goal against the supposedly invincible Soviets, or speed skater Eric Heiden's 5 gold medal winning races. But I've conducted so many interviews and written so many stories about those games and those performers that I feel as if I had a front row seat to history. I also have a soft spot in my heart for the Olympics because I covered 5 of them. Those assignments in Norway, Atlanta, Australia, Greece, and China enabled me to experience the power of these sports spectacles to celebrate humanity and our similarities rather than our differences. Despite the crass commercialism, jingoism, and corruption that occasionally overshadow the Games, the Olympics remain one of the few events capable of bringing this fractured world together every 2 years. Hochul and state government and business officials clearly were influenced by the show Italy put on in February and by the World Cup fervor currently on display in host cities like Los Angeles and the Big Apple. The time is now to return the Olympic flame back to New York, the governor said Monday in a press release announcing the formation of an exploratory committee. Milano Cortina, site of the 2026 Winter Games, showcased the immense possibility that comes with the dual-city Olympic Games. It's clear that we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to build on Lake Placid's Olympic legacy, New York City's global platform, and the strengths that make our state unique. Thanks to more than $750 million in state investments to modernize Lake Placid's Olympic venues in recent years, the region has become a year-round hub for recreation, athlete development, and international competitions. Downhill and cross-country skiing and sliding events, bobsled, skeleton, etc., can be held there. The infrastructure for other competitions such as figure skating, speed skating, curling, and hockey are in place in New York, with arenas such as Manhattan's Madison Square Garden, Brooklyn's Barclays Center, and Long Island's USB Arena readily available. I would love to see the opening ceremonies in Lake Placid and the closing ceremonies in Yankee Stadium. The 1980 Winter Games marked a turning point in Olympic popularity and scope. The Cinderella run by the U.S. hockey team, coupled with Heiden and Sweden's ski legend Ingemar Stenmark's multiple gold performances, resulted in the broadcast and later streaming rights to become stratospheric. ABC paid $91.5 million to chronicle the Lake Placid Games, while NBC shelled out $3.5 billion for February's Milano Cortina Games, roughly 35 times more. After the miracle in the Adirondacks nearly 5 decades ago, it became apparent it would take more than a village to host the Olympics. Since that time, the Games have become regional affairs. That was underscored in each of the Olympics I covered, where, for example, I had to fly to Thessaloniki, in northern Greece and the island of Crete to the south before returning to Athens during my coverage of the Abby Wambach-fueled run to the Americas and 2004 gold medal in women's soccer. It was the same in Norway in 1994, as I traveled an hour south of Olympic Village and Lillehammer to cover speed and figure skating, and an hour north to chronicle the gold medal-winning downhill performance by Williamson's Diane Roth. Though I wasn't there, I was told the Milano Cortina Games in Italy were so spread out, venues were separated by 6-hour train rides in some instances. Although I'm cool with calling these the Lake Placid New York City Games, I hope the exploratory committee gives serious consideration to a few other Empire State venues, including one half-hour south of Rochester. That would be the Bristol Mountains Ski Resort's Aerial Ski Training Center. Founded by Coach Johnny Croats, it's now a host site for prestigious World Cup ski events and an Olympic incubator, producing a number of top-ranked aerialists, including 2-time Olympic gold medalist Chris Lillis. The committee is expected to conclude its work in a year. There isn't a rush to make a bid because in all likelihood New York would be looking at hosting the Winter Olympics and Paralympics in 2042. France is scheduled to host in 2030 and Salt Lake City in 2034. Switzerland officials are currently negotiating for 2038 games. There's always the chance Hochul's committee will consider the games cost prohibitive, but I don't see that happening. Unlike most cities and nations that bid to host the Olympics, the infrastructure already is in place. It can't hurt to at least explore the possibilities. Best-selling author and nationally honored journalist Scott Petoniak is the Rochester Business Journal sports columnist. The third option. Why your best employees are quietly losing their edge. Best at Work Insights by Jaime Raul Cepeda. One of the best jobs I ever had was also quietly killing me. Plush role inside a big company, gourmet meals all day, that kind of position most people would give a leg for. The people were great, but the org was so deep that my role stayed narrow and shallow. The resources were so good I started leaning on them instead of my own instincts. The work was interesting until the learning curve flattened. After that, it was just something I did between gourmet lunches. It was a wonderful workplace. It wasn't right for me. I was losing my edge and didn't realize it until I was already dull. The conversation about modern work is stuck in two camps, and both are wrong. The hustle camp tells you to grind 14-hour days, 10 times your output, and optimize every minute. It produces big achievements and bigger burnouts. Deloitte found 77% of professionals are burnt out at their current job. The comfort camp tells you to act your wage, do what's required to keep your job, and prioritize wellness above everything else. It produces low blood pressure and a slow corrosion you don't notice until you can't remember the last time you were proud of something you built. Gallup finds somewhere between a third and half of workers are experiencing bore-out, chronically under-challenged at work. If you're not crashing, you're corroding. Both camps produce people who'd struggle to tell you what they're getting better at. They look like opposites. They're the same trap. There's a third thing. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi called it flow, the state you enter when the challenge in front of you is slightly bigger than what you're sure you can pull off, and your skills are just barely enough to meet it. Time goes elastic, the work pulls you in, you stop watching the clock because the clock stops mattering. You've been there. You probably weren't trying to be happy when you were. You were trying to figure out the recipe or the deck or the hard conversation. Happiness was the dividend, not the goal. This is what people actually want from work. The feeling of walking out on a Friday a little more capable than they walked in Monday. Why do most companies keep picking a camp instead of building the third thing? Because camps are easier to staff and easier to advertise. We're a high-performance culture, and we're a wellness-first culture. Both fit on careers page. We grow people through calibrated stretch doesn't. The camps let leaders manage to hours, OKRs, perks, and NPS scores, clean numbers, legible metrics, defensible decisions. Supported stretch requires a manager who actually knows the person across the desk well enough to hand them a problem sized for who they are this quarter, this week. That's slow, expensive, and impossible to scale by memo. The two camps are a shortcut around the hardest part of leadership, paying attention to one specific human. Early in my career, I was terrified of public speaking. Any speech, 2 minutes, 5 people, gave me hives. I'd stress for days and not enjoy a second of the actual moment. When I realized I couldn't grow without fixing this, I started hunting stretch on purpose. Toastmasters, 1-minute speeches, then 5-minute speeches, then impromptu, then persuasive, supported enough to survive each round, stretched enough that the next round was always slightly bigger than the one before. That's the model, supported stretch. The thing comfort can't give you and grind can't sustain. The data is telling us something leaders don't want to hear. Burned out on one side, bored on the other, a shrinking middle where people are actually growing. The fix isn't a new benefits package or a harder performance review cycle. It's harder than that. It's a manager who knows their people well enough to match them to problems that fit. Not too safe, not too crushing. That's what people are actually asking for when they leave for another job. When they phone it in, when they say they're disengaged, they're not asking for easier. They're asking for the chance to get better. That's the thing that no careers page can advertise, and it's why we keep ducking it. Jaime Raul Zepeda is Executive Vice President and Principal Consultant at Best Companies Group, a research firm operating 60-plus employer recognition programs across North America. He writes about the intersection of organizational structure and business performance. You can connect with him on LinkedIn or via email at jzepeda@bestcompaniesgroup.com. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the June 26th issue of the Rochester Business Journal. Your reader has been Randy Silva. Thank you for listening.